Hello, my name is Sergio Gonzalez. I'm a PhD student in Camilo José Cela University. My thesis is on regional competitiveness in Latin America. I'm going to show you the initial results. I'm doing a comparative analysis to understand regional performance. So I believe that the best way to understand the regional performance in Latin America is to compare regions between countries. Why? There are two basic reasons why I think this is correct. The first reason is because regions in Latin America are competing between countries for foreign investment. That's the first reason. One clear example is Amazon. Amazon announced that it was going to install a data center in Latin America, and they were looking at two countries. They were looking at Chile and they were looking at Argentina. So in Chile, they were looking at, not at a random place, they were looking at the Metropolitan region in Chile, which had the infrastructure, the skilled workers, the connectivity that they needed. And the other region was around the province of Buenos Aires in Argentina, which also had the same conditions to support such a center. So in this case, the two countries and the governments of those countries were eager to receive that investment, and in a way they were competing for that foreign investment. They were not competing within the country. The second reason is the companies are competing for product placement in international markets. And this happens between companies that are placed in different regions in different countries. One clear example in Chile is the table grape industry, which is exporting table grapes to the United States. They're located in the northern part of the country, in the Atacama region, and they're competing in the US with the table grapes that are exported from Peru and that come from the Ica Valley. So in this case, Chile produces table grapes exported to the US, which are competing in the US market against Peruvian grapes. They're not competing with other regions within Chile that are also exporting to the US market. Why? Because the harvest timings are different. So in the case of Chile, the table grapes that are in the northern part of the country compete with the table grapes from Peru. So it makes more sense to compare the competitive advantages that Chile has in this northern region in Atacama with the competitive advantage that the region around Ica has in Peru. So why am I using the regional competitiveness framework? It's a widely used term, competitiveness. It has been applied to countries, to firms, to regions, but the concept has evolved. Today there is a consensus that the goal of competitiveness is to increase well-being of the population, and this will be done through increasing productivity. One definition that I like and that I'm using for my thesis, which I think it's a comprehensive definition, is the one by Anani and Dijkstra. You can see it here. It's the ability to offer an attractive and sustainable environment for firms and residents to live and work. So a region, to be successful, it needs to attract both firms and residents. It needs to be sustainable, and it needs to offer a platform to increase the performance of the companies that are within that region. So for the methodology, in this case, for my comparative study, I'm using the model which is based in O'Higgins and Antofagasta from 2017, which separates competitiveness into inputs or capabilities, which will result in a competitive output, which in this case is productivity, and that will yield a final result which would have an economic, social, and environmental component. So to measure this type of competitiveness, I'm using data from 71 regions for the year 2017, and these are regions from Colombia, from Mexico, and from Chile. Why I selected these countries is because they are similar in the level of competitiveness at the national level for the World Economic Forum Competitiveness Index. The sources I use are the most comparative possible. I'm using the OECD regional database, official government data, World Bank data, and information from the national central banks in each country. The variables are 68, but to increase the effectiveness of the measurement, I used principal component analysis to group and select variables. In the end, I have 35 variables that maximize the result. These 35 variables explain more than 60% of the variation of the dataset. The first 4 dimensions I group are shown here. Dimension 1 is related to education, training, and skills. Dimension 2 are health and public services. Dimension 3 is the economic structure and performance. And dimension 4 is density and infrastructure of the region. So the results that the average of these 4 dimensions yield is not a surprising one. Rank 1, 2, and 3 are the regions that hold the capitals of each country, which means that the most competitive or that they have the highest competitiveness capabilities are those regions that are allocating big cities or capital cities in this case from 3 different countries. So it also, you can see here the ranking for the 71 regions, but it helps you put in context the type of regions that you need to compare in case you want to compare 2 regions from two different countries. So just to show you what type of components are the most important for the top ranking regions, you can see that everything related to education, training, and skills is very important in the competitiveness of these 4 high ranking regions. And those related to density and infrastructure are fairly important in Bogota and Distrito Federal in Mexico, but not so much in Metropolitan and Magallanes from Chile. This is basically because the density and the type of infrastructure in Chile is not as dense and heavy as it is in the other 2 countries. Another interesting result is that the average of competitiveness capabilities, the 4 dimensions, has correlation with the result of competitiveness, which in this case I'm measuring through poverty, GDP per capita, and the amount of CO2 emissions per square kilometer. This is all normalized data and average data for each region. So you can see as the competitiveness capabilities increase, the result is better in each region. So in conclusion, I can say that the largest endowment of competitiveness capabilities is found in big cities or in regions that allocate big cities, in this case the capitals of each country. I can also point out that education, skills, and training are playing a major role for regional performance in Latin America. These factors and the indicators related to these factors are the ones that explain most of the differences between regions in Latin America. Finally, competitiveness capabilities and the results, such as poverty, GDP per capita, and the amount of CO2 emissions are linked. So competitiveness capabilities will play a major role in the overall outcome and the level of welfare that the population from that region has. Thank you for your attention. There's my email in case you have any questions. Thank you for your attention.